Everyone abandoned him, but the mountain didn't. When a homeless veteran and his loyal dog were forced into the freezing wilderness with nothing but a pack and each other, no one believed they'd survive a single night. But deep in the Sawtooth Mountains, they found a hidden cave and a way to fight back against winter itself. Before we begin, comment below and tell me where you're watching from, your city or country. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The knock came just as the sunlight was thinning across the worn porch boards, turning everything a dull orange, the color of things fading. Logan Hale stood inside the doorway for a long moment before pulling it open, already knowing nothing good ever arrived at sunset. The sheriff's deputy stood there with his hat in one hand and a folded stack of papers in the other, his breath drifting in the November cold. His shoulders sagged the way people do when they've delivered too many bad news notices in one lifetime. Rex stepped forward first, always first, his big frame tense, ears pricked, planting himself between Logan and the uniform. He wasn't growling, but his body said enough. One wrong move and I'm here. The deputy lifted a hand gently. Easy, boy. Nobody's looking for trouble. Logan swallowed hard. His chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Something about the man's tone, the clipped authority in his voice, rattled a place deep in him. The air shifted, and for a moment he wasn't standing in his doorway. He was somewhere hot, loud, dust in his eyes, orders being shouted over his head. His fingers twitched, his breath shortened. "Mr. Hale," the deputy said softly, as if sensing the shift. "I'm real sorry about this." Logan forced himself into the present and nodded, jaw tight. "Let's just get it done." The deputy opened the papers with stiff fingers. "It's the final foreclosure notice. Bank processed the seizure this afternoon. You need to be off the property before sundown." Rex let out a low chuff, stepping half an inch closer to Logan's leg. Logan stared at the papers without taking them. Words blurred together. Delinquent, overdue, repossession. He'd known this was coming. Notices had been piling up like winter snow. Still, hearing it spoken out loud, he felt something like a punch deep in the ribs. "How long do I have?" His voice came out rough, quieter than he intended. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Couple hours. I'll wait out front so you have some privacy." He set the papers on the porch rail, touched the brim of his hat, and stepped back. The door closed with a soft click that sounded much too final. Inside, the house felt colder than the air outside. The rooms were mostly empty now. Sold, traded, lost one piece at a time. But the walls still held remnants of a life he'd tried to keep stitched together. Logan stared at the failure of it all, chest rising and falling too fast. He pressed a hand against his thigh to stop its shake, but the tremor traveled upward through his arm, steady as a drum in a distant memory he wished he could forget. Rex brushed against him, sensing it, grounding him the way he always did. Logan knelt, running a hand down the dog's neck, feeling the warmth beneath the thick fur. "It's all right," he whispered, though he didn't believe it. "We've gotten through worse." Rex leaned harder into him, as if insisting the words could be true. Logan stood slowly and began packing. There wasn't much left to take. His old steel pot, his field knife, a frayed blanket, a half-filled canteen, and the small cedar box containing the things that had followed him home from the war. He shut each cupboard gently, almost apologetically, as though the kitchen itself deserved better. With every movement, the tightness in his chest deepened. When he bent to gather the last bag, a sudden cough tore through him, harsh, ripping, more violent than usual. He doubled over, gripping the counter for balance, waiting for air to return. For a moment, the world tunneled to gray. Rex pressed against his side, pacing anxiously until Logan managed to straighten. "I'm okay," Logan rasped, though his lungs vibrated with the lie. "Just need a minute." He carried the bag to the living room and set it beside the door. Then he stopped, standing in the center of the empty floorboards, unsure what to do with his hands or his breath or the ache behind his ribs. The house was silent in a way that didn't feel like peace. It felt like abandonment, like being left behind. Again. He exhaled shakily and lowered himself to the floor, resting his back against the wall where sunlight still touched the wood. He rubbed at the scar beneath his collarbone, a reflex when the old pain stirred. His cough returned, softer this time, but deeper, dragging at the already frayed edges of his strength. When he looked up, tears he hadn't permitted were burning behind his eyes. Rex approached slowly, head low, tail still. He placed his muzzle on Logan's thigh, warm and steady, letting out a soft, rumbling breath. Logan's fingers sank into the fur without thinking, and something inside him loosened, barely, but enough to breathe again. The sun dipped below the hills, taking with it the last light inside the home he no longer owned. Logan whispered into the dimness, voice breaking just a little. "It's just you and me now, buddy." Rex stayed pressed against him, unwavering. And for the first time that day, Logan felt a thread of something not quite hope, something smaller, more fragile, but alive. A beginning, hiding in the ruins of an ending, a reason to stand back up. He rose slowly, bracing one hand against the wall as Rex circled to his side, ready to steady him if he faltered. The cough had left a raw burn in his chest, and every breath scraped like cold steel along old scar tissue. But the house was no longer his, and the light outside was thinning fast. Staying wasn't an option. Logan slung the worn canvas pack over his shoulder, adjusted it once against the ache in his ribs, then whistled softly. Rex responded instantly, falling in beside him as they stepped out into the fading amber glow. The deputy waited at the end of the gravel drive, leaning on his cruiser with a posture that carried quiet regret. He didn't speak, and Logan didn't look back. There was nothing left inside that house that belonged to him anymore. The moment Logan's boots touched the county road, a strange, hollow clarity settled in his mind. Yesterday was gone. He could mourn it later, maybe. But not tonight. Not while the cold was already creeping down from Sawtooth Ridge. He turned north. Rex padded close, occasionally bumping Logan's leg as if guiding him toward the only direction that ever made sense anymore. Away from the noise, the mistakes, the expectations. Toward the mountains that had once taught him how to survive. The town lay 2 miles behind them before the deputy's cruiser finally pulled away. Its taillights disappeared, leaving the night unfurling in wide silence. Logan stopped long enough to shift the pack and take a slow pull from his canteen. The air tasted like frost and pine sap, the kind of cold that sank directly into bone. "Long road ahead, buddy," he murmured. Rex looked up, tail flicking once, not wagging, not excited, just acknowledging, as if to say, "I know, and I'm here." They walked until the last lights of town were swallowed by the hills. With every step, Logan's breath grew heavier, clouding in pale bursts that faded quickly in the wind. His knee ached, the way it had since his last deployment, and his boots, once broken in perfectly, felt stiff from months of disuse. But he kept going. The pavement ended near an old cattle gate. Beyond it lay a narrow dirt road leading toward the foothills. Logan lifted the latch and let the gate creak open just enough for them to slip through. When it clanged shut behind them, the sound echoed like the closing of a chapter he'd never intended to write. By the time dusk turned to full dark, the temperature had dropped sharply. Logan could feel the tight pull in his lungs that always warned him he'd pushed too far. They reached a clearing edged by towering fir trees, their branches whispering above in winds that hadn't yet reached the lower valley. "We'll camp here," he said softly, though speaking made him cough again, bending at the waist until the spasm passed. Rex nudged his leg, steady and patient, waiting until Logan found his breath again. "Yeah," Logan muttered. "I'm fine. Just cold air." He wasn't fine. Not really. But Rex didn't need to carry that weight. Not tonight. Logan knelt and cleared a small spot beneath a cluster of fir trees where the ground was driest. He gathered a modest pile of twigs and pine needles, arranging them carefully, like muscle memory guiding his fingers. He struck the lighter once, twice, until the spark caught. A small flame flickered to life. Weak, trembling, stubborn. It grew slowly as he fed it, warming the sharpness out of the air. Rex curled near the fire's edge, not quite asleep, not quite awake, always alert. Logan eased himself down beside him, stretching sore legs and rubbing the old injury along his ribs. The firelight played across Rex's face, reflecting in those deep, steady eyes that never judged, never questioned, only watched over him the same way they had overseas. "You saved my hide more times than I can count," Logan whispered. "Guess we're starting over again." Rex shifted closer, resting his head on Logan's boot. The night deepened. Coyotes yipped far off, but none dared approach. The stars emerged above the treetops in slow, crisp clusters. Logan stared up at them, tracing constellations he remembered from nights on desert sand and mountain ridges half a world away. Back then, he'd believed coming home would mean peace. He'd believed he'd earned rest. But the world didn't work that way. Bills piled up. Nightmares sharpened. People drifted. And now all he had was the dog beside him, a pack half full of memories and tools, and a direction. North, toward Sawtooth. Tomorrow they would climb higher. Tomorrow the road would get harder. But tonight, he let the fire warm his hands. Let the steady heartbeat of Rex's breathing center him. Let the cold air wash away everything he couldn't fix. For a brief moment, under the shelter of the trees, he felt something almost like calm. But as the winds shifted, carrying the distant scent of winter storms, Logan Hale knew one thing clearly. What lay ahead would test them far more than anything they'd left behind. He closed his eyes anyway, one hand resting on Rex's shoulder, trusting the dog to keep watch the way he always had. And in that fragile sliver of peace, Logan finally slept. The night passed in uneasy fragments, wind shifting, branches groaning, the distant crackle of ice settling along the ridgeline. Logan woke before dawn, stiff and cold, the fire long since faded into a gray smear of ash. Rex sat beside him, alert in that still, statuesque way only trained dogs could manage, eyes fixed on the faint orange glow rising through the trees. "Good boy," Logan murmured, voice hoarse as he pushed himself upright. His breath fogged out in front of him, thin and sharp. The cold had settled deep into his lungs again, giving each inhale a bite that made him wince. They broke camp with only the sound of pine needles crunching underfoot. Logan kicked snow over the fire pit and hoisted his pack, tightening the straps the way he used to before long rucks in the service. It didn't fit as well as it used to, lighter now, but somehow heavier in all the ways that mattered. The trail narrowed as they climbed northward, the trees leaning in, their branches heavy with early frost. Sawtooth peaks rose in jagged silhouettes ahead, catching the first light of morning like blades catching fire. Logan paused for a moment, studying them. He remembered being younger, stronger, and believing these mountains were invincible. Now they felt more like judges, watching him approach with a kind of stern patience. Rex trotted ahead, nose low, tail sweeping steadily. Every so often he looked back, checking on Logan, making sure the pace wasn't too fast. Logan appreciated it, even though he hated needing it. Yeah, I'm coming." He gave a half smile as Rex paused again. "You're worse than a drill sergeant." The dog huffed through his nose, almost amused. By midday, they reached a narrow ravine where a small stream cut through the rocks. The water was icy clear, racing over pale pebbles. Logan knelt to fill his canteen, flinching as the cold seeped into his fingers. Rex drank beside him, lapping quickly before lifting his head, ears flicking towards something farther upstream. "What do you hear?" Logan whispered, instantly alert. Rex stepped forward, muscles coiled. Logan followed his gaze. At first he saw nothing, just scattered boulders, a fallen tree, the thin silver line of the stream winding into the shadowed part of the ravine. But then, a faint echo. A drip? A hollow thump? The sound was distorted, bouncing strangely between the rock walls. Rex started moving, slow and cautious, every footstep placed with precision. Logan rose to follow, pulse climbing. They advanced deeper into the ravine where sunlight barely touched the ground. The walls narrowed, forming a natural corridor. The air grew colder, stiller. The sound became clearer, a soft, rhythmic tapping, the kind water makes when it falls from a height onto stone. Then the ravine opened into a small clearing beneath a sheer cliff. And there it was, a dark mouth of rock hidden beneath an overhang of weathered limestone. It stretched wide at the base and narrowed as it climbed upward, creating a natural canopy that shielded the entrance from wind and snow. Moss clung to the shaded stone and dry needles carpeted the ground. It looked untouched, forgotten by time. Rex stood at the threshold, tail lowered but not tucked, ears forward, body leaning slightly inside. Logan approached slowly, feeling the weight of the moment in his chest. "A cave," he breathed. He crouched near the opening, letting his fingers graze the ground. Dry. No signs of recent flooding. No footprints, human or animal. He reached inside and tapped the stone. The echo traveled deep, suggesting a large interior. Rex stepped in first, nose twitching as he swept the shadows. Logan followed, the air cooling instantly around him. He flicked his lighter, holding the flame forward. The cave walls glowed in flickers, smooth surfaces carved by centuries of water, narrow channels rising into unseen darkness. He moved farther inside. The ground sloped gently upward, then leveled into a space tall enough for him to stand fully. He tested the air again, brisk but breathable. No scent of rot, no sign of animals claiming it as home. Rex sniffed upward, and Logan finally noticed it. A thin draft from above, a faint ribbon of air trailing down from a crack in the ceiling. "A natural vent," he murmured. "Perfect for a fire." For the first time in days, maybe weeks, Logan felt something warm unfurl in his chest. Not joy, not relief, but a small, stubborn spark that whispered, "This could work." He set his pack down and took a slow walk around the interior. The walls curved gently, forming a natural bowl of stone. Dry leaves and twigs had blown in over the years, collecting in pockets along the edges. It was nearly 40 feet deep, sheltered from weather by the cliff shelf above. Rex's nails clicked softly as he followed Logan's circuit, pausing now and then to sniff at corners, tail sweeping with growing certainty. Logan rested a hand on Rex's back. "If this place keeps us alive tonight," he murmured, "it's home enough." His words echoed quietly inside the cavern, bouncing softly back to them as if the cave were answering. Outside, the wind began to rise, brushing dust from the ledge and moaning through the pines above. Logan stepped out to look at the sky. Clouds were gathering along the ridge, a warning of weather shifting faster than he'd hoped. He turned back toward the cave entrance. "We're staying," he said simply. Rex padded inside without hesitation, content with the decision. Logan hauled his pack in, knees aching from the climb, lungs tight from the cold. He lowered himself onto a smooth patch of stone and let out a slow breath as the shadows closed around him. Not threatening, but enclosing, protective. For the first time since losing everything, Logan felt the faint outline of safety taking shape around him. Crude safety, temporary safety, but real. And as Rex curled beside him, head resting across Logan's boots, the mountains seemed to exhale with them, as if accepting the two weary travelers into its quiet, ancient heart. Whatever came next, they wouldn't be facing it out in the open. The mountain had taken them in. Morning reached the cave in slow, muted beams, filtering through the overhang like light sifting through old curtains. Logan woke to the sound of Rex stretching beside him, the dog's paws scraping lightly on stone. The air inside the cave was cold but still, no wind slicing through, no frost biting at exposed skin. For a moment, that quiet alone felt like a blessing. "Morning, buddy," Logan murmured, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Rex nudged his shoulder in return, tail sweeping across the ground in a soft rhythm. Logan sat up and listened. The cave breathed around him, a low hum of ancient stone settling into itself. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the juniper branches that partially shielded the entrance. Winter was coming fast, too fast for comfort. He needed to turn this fragile shelter into something that could withstand what the mountain had in store. He stepped into the daylight, stretching sore muscles while scanning the surrounding terrain. Fallen trees lay scattered across the slope above, storm debris from years past. Thick trunks, half-decayed branches, and driftwood carried down by seasonal runoff. Exactly what he'd need. He pointed toward a cluster of downed pines. "We're building today," he said. Rex didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Focused, steady, purposeful. He bounded ahead, nose low, investigating the woodpile with a seriousness that made Logan smile despite everything. Logan walked over to the nearest pine trunk and laid a palm against it. The bark flaked beneath his fingers. Dead, but solid at the core. Good enough. He retrieved his hatchet from his pack. The weight of it brought back memories. Fixing fences on his father's land. Clearing brush on training exercises. Splitting firewood in the early mornings before deployments. He raised the hatchet and swung. Pain shot down his arm instantly. He paused, shaking out the tremor, breathing through the tightness in his chest. His lungs felt stiff, as if the cold had poured concrete between each breath. But he swung again, and again. Wood chips flew, scattering across the forest floor. Rex stayed close, watching, pacing in a slow circle. Occasionally he nudged a smaller branch with his nose, dragging it toward the cave as if contributing to the effort. Logan chuckled quietly. "Good scout. Keep 'em coming." Hours slipped by in hard, methodical work. Logan trimmed branches, split small trunks, shaped planks as best he could with the tools he had. His hands blistered quickly. The cold air turned every scrape into a sting, every breath into a shallow ache. Sweat mixed with frost across his brow, and more than once he had to stop to steady the tremor in his fingers. But each time he paused, Rex nudged his elbow, reminding him he wasn't working alone. By midday, a modest pile of shaped logs rested near the cave entrance. Logan measured the gap with his eyes, about 5 feet across, 7 feet high, narrowing slightly at the top. He could build a wall there. Not a perfect one, not a carpenter's masterpiece, but one strong enough to keep out wind, snow, and whatever winter decided to throw at them. He started with 2 thick posts, dragging them into place with a grunt. His boots slipped twice on the uneven ground, but Rex pressed his weight against Logan's hip, bracing him long enough to set the post upright. Logan drove stones around the base, securing it as best he could. "Good teamwork," he panted. The next log was heavier. As he lifted it, something inside him snapped. Not physically, but in memory. A voice. A blast. The smell of burning fuel. The pressure wave that had thrown him into a wall overseas, stealing half his breath for months. Suddenly the mountainside blurred and twisted. The log slipped from his grip, thudding against the ground near his foot. Logan staggered backward, clutching his temples as a flashback surged up. Shouts, metal striking metal, the concussive roar of something too close. He couldn't breathe, couldn't orient himself. The cold mountain air vanished, replaced by the dust and chaos of a memory he had worked so hard to bury. Rex lunged toward him. The dog pressed his head against Logan's chest, firm and insistent, grounding him with warmth and weight. Rex whined low in his throat, nudging repeatedly until Logan's eyes focused again. The sound of the wind returned first, then the smell of pine, then the harsh burn of cold air in his lungs. Logan sucked in a ragged breath. "I'm here," he gasped. "I'm here. Not there." Rex stayed pressed against him until Logan's shaking eased. "Okay," Logan whispered. "I'm okay. Thanks, buddy." He picked up the log again, slower this time, more careful, and lifted it into place between the posts. His muscles strained, but determination carried him where strength faltered. He hammered wedges between the logs to tighten the fit, creating a crude but sturdy barrier. Logan worked until the sun dipped low behind the ridge. Shadows swallowed the trees, leaving the half-finished wall glowing faintly in the fading light. The wind had died down, replaced by the distant hush of the stream below and the slow crackle of settling branches overhead. Rex lay beside the entrance now, head resting on his paws, watching Logan with soft, steady eyes. The wall wasn't complete, not yet, but it stood tall, shoulder height, and already blocked most of the draft. Tomorrow he'd add the top layers. Tomorrow he'd find a way to fashion a door. Tomorrow he'd make the cave a real home. For now, he stepped back inside, breath steaming in the dimness, muscles trembling with exhaustion. Rex followed close behind as Logan sat heavily on the stone floor. Outside, night settled over the mountain like a thick, dark blanket. Inside, behind the partially built wall, Logan felt something he hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Progress. The beginnings of safety. A fragile foothold against a world that had been crumbling beneath him piece by piece. And as Rex lay beside him, Logan reached out, resting a hand gently on the dog's neck. "We're building something here," he whispered. "Brick by brick. Breath by breath." The cave held their words, quiet and warm, as if promising it would hold them too. By dawn, the temperature had plunged again, sharp enough to sting exposed skin the moment Logan stepped outside. His breath rolled out in thick white clouds as he studied the half-finished wall. Today he needed fire, real fire, a steady one, before the cold settled in for good. Rex trotted at his side, shaking frost from his coat. The dog's ears flicked toward every sound. A raven's cry high above, the distant crack of frozen bark splitting under pressure. Winter was coming faster than the mountain usually allowed. Logan could feel it, deep in his bones. "First things first," he muttered. "We need heat." He gathered fallen limbs and pine needles, hauling them into the cave until he had a decent pile. He scraped a shallow depression near the center where ancient fire rings had once been, muscles protesting with every movement. Kneeling, he arranged kindling with practiced hands, hands that once built campfires on foreign soil, where flames had meant life and exposure all at once. Rex lay nearby, head resting between his paws, watching intently. "All right," Logan whispered, flicking his lighter. "Let's see what this place can do." The kindling caught quickly, snapping and popping with a sharp brightness. For a moment, it looked promising, golden tongues rising in thin spirals. Then the flames bent sideways, hard, shoved by some invisible force. Smoke swirled, thick and confused, refusing to rise the way it should. Logan frowned. "Come on, breathe!" But the cave didn't, not the way he needed it to. Smoke billowed outward, curling low across the floor, before rushing straight back into Logan's face. He coughed, waving a hand uselessly, eyes watering as the fire sputtered and choked. Rex leapt up, ears pinned, barking sharply at the swirling gray clouds. Logan tried shifting the fire closer to the center. No change. He moved it nearer the vent crack above. Worse. The smoke slammed downward like a living thing, flooding the space until Logan's lungs seized. He staggered back, coughing so violently he had to brace himself on the cave wall. The cold air outside didn't help. It felt like breathing ice shards. Rex nudged him, whining, trying to guide him toward the entrance. Another cough cut his words. "I'm fine. Just give me a second." But he wasn't fine. His chest burned, old scar tissue screaming against the cold and the smoke. The fire sputtered out completely, leaving a smoldering heap that filled the air with bitter fumes. Logan sank to his knees, rubbing his eyes. He'd built walls before. He'd survived worse conditions. But right now, the simplest thing, the one thing he absolutely needed, refused to work. "Why can't anything just—" He clenched a fist, striking the dirt floor once, hard enough to sting. "Why can't anything work?" His voice cracked at the end, raw, angry, wounded. Rex approached gently this time. He grabbed Logan's sleeve in his teeth, not pulling, but anchoring him. A grounding weight, a gentle insistence. Logan let out a broken laugh, shaky and hollow. "Yeah, I know. Don't lose it." He wiped his eyes with the back of his wrist, smearing soot across his cheek. When he finally looked up, the plume of smoke drifting from the smoldering embers didn't rise straight into the air. Instead, it curled backward, sliding toward a narrow fissure high on the left wall, one he hadn't noticed last night. Logan stared at it. A crack, higher than the obvious vent, narrow but real. Rex followed his gaze and barked once, sharp, as if confirming the discovery. "You see it too," Logan breathed. He stood, moving closer. The fissure was no wider than his fist, yet stretched upward at an angle, disappearing into deeper stone. He reached a hand toward it and felt the faintest pull of cold air moving upward. A natural draft. His pulse quickened, not from exertion this time, but from possibility. Logan crouched beside the dying fire, studying how the smoke shifted when he altered the embers with a gentle poke. The air flowed wrong now, but if he could direct it, shape it, maybe the cave could breathe the way a proper shelter should. "This might work," he whispered, the first note of optimism threading into his voice. "We just need to build around it. Give it a throat, a channel." The idea sparked like dry tinder catching flame. He turned to Rex. "You're a genius, you know that?" Rex thumped his tail twice, pleased. Fueled by a new surge of determination, Logan dragged a few flat stones from the cave edge and began arranging them, forming a rough outline beneath the fissure. His movements were slow, measured, deliberate, as if he were laying the first bricks of something sacred. An hour passed, then another. Each stone he placed felt like reclaiming a small piece of control. Smoke still lingered, but now it drifted upward, tugged by the natural current. Not perfect, but better. As he worked, memories flickered. Nights huddled around makeshift fires in evacuation zones, where smoke rising properly could be the difference between being found or staying hidden. He remembered teaching younger soldiers how to build field stoves out of mud and tin cans. Remembered the pride on their faces when the flames finally behaved. Rex interrupted the memory with a soft whine. Logan paused, exhaling slowly. "I know," he said. "One thing at a time. But this is something we can fix." By the time the sun dipped low enough to paint the cave mouth in muted orange, Logan had built the beginnings of a functioning hearth. Ragged stones forming a funnel toward the fissure, packed tight with clay he'd scraped from the ground near the stream. He struck the fire again. This time, the flames rose clean and straight. The smoke lifted, hesitated, then drifted toward the fissure, pulled upward, swallowed into the stone. Logan held his breath. The fire did not choke. The cave did not fill with smoke. It worked. A slow smile broke across his soot-streaked face, small, quiet, hard-earned. Rex wagged his tail, triumphant. For a long moment, Logan simply sat near the fire, letting the warmth thaw the ache in his chest, letting the success sink in. Out here, there were no victories handed out freely. Every one had to be fought for, scraped from cold stone. But today, he'd won a small one. And in the glow of the steady flame, the cave finally felt like it could be more than a temporary refuge. It could be a beginning. A place where two weary souls, man and dog, could dare to rebuild. Together. By the next morning, the cold had settled in deeper, turning every breath into a thin ribbon of frost. Logan stepped out of the cave and felt it immediately. The mountain was shifting seasons, preparing for something harsher. The sun glowed weakly behind thin clouds, offering little warmth, and the air smelled faintly of snow waiting to happen. "Food," Logan murmured, adjusting the straps on his pack. "We need something more than hope and pine smoke." Rex was already alert, his nose tilted toward the breeze rolling down from the higher ridge. He trotted a few paces ahead, then looked back, as if urging Logan to keep up. "All right, lead the way," Logan said with a tired smile. They followed a narrow trail that cut through the trees, weaving between clusters of fir and boulders draped in soft moss. The sound of running water grew louder the farther they went, a bright, steady rush against the quiet forest. Logan felt a small lift inside him. Running water meant food, one way or another. The path opened into a small ravine, lined with smooth stones. A swift creek flowed through the center, clear as glass, curling around rocks with soft splashes. The sunlight hit the water just right, revealing faint shadows moving beneath the surface. Fish. Rex trotted to the edge and peered in, tail swishing once. Logan crouched beside him, watching the darting silver shapes below. They were fast and wary, too quick for bare hands. "Too shallow," Logan muttered. "Water moves too fast. They won't hold still." The current ran sharp and narrow here, slipping past rocks that jutted like broken teeth. Logan scanned upstream and downstream, studying the creek like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "If we slow the flow," he murmured, "create a deeper pocket." The idea grew quickly, clicking into place like pieces of old training resurfacing from memory. A small dam, not enough to disturb the ecosystem, just enough to form a calm pool where fish would gather. Logan rose, rolling his shoulders. "We're building again, buddy." Rex released a low, approving bark. They began gathering stones, smooth, round ones from the creek bed and larger, angular rocks from the bank. Logan worked slowly at first, testing each stone before setting it in place. Rex helped in his own way, dragging smaller rocks by gripping them with his teeth or nudging them along with his nose. "Good work," Logan said, patting the dog's head. "Stronger than half the guys I served with." Rex barked once, as if in agreement. Hours passed as they constructed the curved wall, stone by stone, arching slightly upstream so the current's force would press the structure tighter instead of breaking it. Logan worked until his fingers went numb, until his breath came in shaky bursts, until the ache in his ribs warned him he was pushing too hard. Still, he kept going. Winter didn't negotiate. By midday, the dam stood nearly 2 feet high. Water pooled behind it, slowing into a still, silvery basin. Shadows gathered near the deepening center, dark shapes gliding lazily. "Perfect," Logan whispered. But when he stepped into the water to reinforce the center, a violent jolt shot up his leg. His muscles seized hard. "Damn! Cramp!" He lost balance, slipping on the slick stones. The current, though shallow, grabbed him harder than expected, dragging him sideways. He gasped as the freezing water slammed into his chest, stealing breath, stealing strength. Rex barked, sharp, urgent. Logan reached for the edge, but his fingers couldn't grip anything. The water scraped his shin against a rock, sending a flare of pain up his leg. For a moment, he felt himself slipping under, not drowning, but losing control, losing footing, losing everything to cold and exhaustion. Then Rex moved. The dog plunged into the water without hesitation, paddling against the current. His teeth clamped onto Logan's sleeve, tugging, pulling with every ounce of strength in his sturdy frame. Good boy, pull!" Logan gasped, kicking feebly against the rocks. Rex heaved backward, paws scrambling. Logan managed to hook his arm around a bigger stone near the bank. With one final pull, they toppled onto the shore in a wet, shivering heap. Logan lay on his back, chest rising in ragged breaths, water dripping from his hair and sleeves. Rex stood over him, shaking vigorously, spraying cold droplets all over his face. "You saved me," Logan whispered, voice trembling from more than the cold. "Again." Rex lowered his head and pressed his forehead gently into Logan's cheek. The moment stretched, quiet, breathless, almost sacred, before Logan forced himself upright. He stripped off his soaked jacket and squeezed the water from it, teeth chattering hard enough to ache. The air bit at his skin, turning his fingertips pale. "Can't get sick out here," he muttered. "Come on, let's finish this." Rex stayed pressed close to his leg as Logan returned to the dam. Working quicker now, he stacked the remaining stones and reinforced the structure until the pool behind it swelled into a calm mirror of deep water. A silver flash caught Logan's eye. A trout, larger than the rest, swirled lazily near the surface. Logan exhaled, breath fogging. "Tomorrow," he said softly. "Tomorrow we fish." The sky had begun to dim by the time they made their way back to the cave. Logan's clothes were still damp, his hands stiff and clumsy, but something inside him felt steadier. Building the dam had cost them strength, but it had given something in return, too. Progress. Possibility. A way to feed themselves when the mountain decided to close its fist around them. When they reached the cave entrance, Logan paused, gazing at the stone walls glowing in the last light of dusk. Rex sat beside him, tail sweeping the ground. "Today was a win," Logan said quietly. "Small, but a win." He stepped inside, feeling the warmth of the hearth they had built together the day before. Rex curled against him, offering heat as Logan dried his clothes near the fire. The mountain outside whispered through the trees, cold and unyielding. But inside, man and dog warmed themselves by a flame that burned straight and true, rising cleanly through the vent they had shaped with weary hands and stubborn hearts. They were surviving. And tomorrow, they would learn to thrive. Morning broke with a crisp clarity that only high mountains could shape. The sky was a pale, hard blue, stretched tight above the ridge like cold glass. Logan stepped out of the cave, feeling a sharp bite in the air. The kind of cold that crept under sleeves and into bones long before winter officially arrived. Rex padded beside him, ears lifted, nose twitching at each shifting breeze. The dog seemed lighter today, alert, confident, as if yesterday's near drowning had only sharpened his instincts. "Let's check the dam," Logan said, adjusting his coat. They followed the narrow trail, descending toward the ravine. Frost rimmed the edges of fallen leaves, and the stream sang steadily in the cold morning air. When they reached the pool they had created, Logan crouched beside the water. The dam held. The pool had deepened overnight, calm and clear. Silver fish glided lazily within, no longer fighting the rapid current. Logan allowed himself a few seconds of satisfaction. "We did good," he murmured. Rex stepped forward, tail wagging once. But then the dog stiffened. His ears pricked sharply. His posture changed, no longer relaxed, but rigid with alert tension. Logan straightened, scanning the tree line. "Easy," he whispered. At first he saw nothing. Just pines swaying in the cold wind, their tall silhouettes dark against the pale sky. Then, movement. A figure slowly descending the slope, using a walking stick carved from a thick branch. The man's coat was patched and faded, his hat pulled low. Snow-dusted boots crunched softly with each careful step. He looked older, 70s maybe, but moved with the quiet awareness of someone who'd spent more time outdoors than in. Rex growled low, a sound like distant thunder. "It's all right," Logan murmured. But he didn't fully believe it yet. The man stopped 10 yards away, raising a hand with deliberate slowness. "Morning to you," he called, his voice carrying the gravelly warmth of someone who'd lived a long, textured life. Logan didn't answer immediately. His pulse picked up. He'd expected solitude on this mountain, expected weeks, maybe months, without seeing another human being. Anyone here, this far from town, had to be either resourceful or trouble. The man smiled a little. "Don't mean to spook you. Been walking this ridge 30 years. Saw smoke down this way yesterday. Thought I ought to check on whoever's trying to settle in before winter." Logan kept Rex close with a subtle hand signal. "Just passing through." "That right? the man said, studying him. Most folks passing through don't build dams and chimney vents. Logan's stomach tightened. He didn't like being observed. He'd worked hard to make himself small, invisible. But the man's gaze wasn't sharp or threatening. It held something else. Familiarity, maybe. Recognition. The old man nodded toward Rex. Fine-looking shepherd. Strong legs, good coat. Loyal by the look of him. Rex eased slightly at the compliment but stayed alert. The man stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. Name's Hank Alder. Got a cabin a few miles north. Folks in town know me as the old hermit on the ridge. Logan felt some of the tension drain from his shoulders. Logan Hale. Hank's eyes softened. Thought I recognized that look about you. What look? The kind men get when they've been through something that takes more than it gives. Logan said nothing, but the silence answered anyway. Hank shifted the bundle he carried and held it out. Brought you something. Inside the cloth were 2 jars of smoked trout, a wedge of cornbread, and a thick wool scarf, old but clean. Logan stared at it, thrown off balance. Why? Winter's coming hard, Hank said simply. Nobody makes it alone up here. Logan hesitated. The instinct to refuse, to keep distance, keep pride, rose fast. But Rex nudged his elbow with his nose, as if urging him to reconsider. Finally, Logan nodded once. Thank you. Hank gave a small smile, the kind that came from knowing gratitude wasn't easy for some men. He looked toward the cave entrance. You picked a good spot. Old shelter. Been empty a long time. But you build it right, it'll keep you alive. And from the looks of things, you're building it right. Logan cleared his throat. Doing what I can. Hank's face grew thoughtful. You keep that fire steady, and watch the skies. Storms don't wait for calendars in these mountains. He paused. And, just so you know, there's been a couple of fellas hunting illegally up toward the north slope. Mean types. Don't take kindly to strangers using their mountain. Logan's jaw tensed. I'm not looking for trouble. Yeah, Hank said quietly. Trouble don't much care what we're looking for. Rex growled again, just a low rumble. Hank tipped his hat. I'll be checking in now and then, not to bother you, just making sure winter doesn't take someone it doesn't need to. With that, he turned and began the slow climb back up the ridge, leaving Logan and Rex alone again with the sound of the wind threading through the pines. Logan watched him disappear between the trees, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not fear, not doubt. Connection. A reminder that even up here, on the jagged edges of the world, there were still people capable of kindness, capable of seeing a broken man and offering something without asking for anything in return. Rex pressed against Logan's leg, seeking reassurance. Logan scratched behind his ear. He's all right, he murmured. At least, I hope so. A cold wind swept down the valley, rustling through branches, carrying the scent of distant snow. Logan looked toward the cave, their cave, standing quiet and strong under the overhang. Then toward the whirlpool of clouds forming above the ridge. Hank's right, he whispered. Storm's coming. Rex lifted his head and stared in the same direction. The mountain had given them warning, and Logan Hale knew better than to ignore a warning. By late afternoon, the wind had sharpened into something thin and mean, cutting through the trees like a blade dragged across frozen bark. The air felt heavier, carrying the metallic scent of a storm not yet born, but already looming. Logan stood outside the cave entrance, scanning the sky. Clouds massed along the ridge in thick, rolling layers, gray at the bottom, bruised purple at the top. Snow clouds. Winter clouds. Rex stood beside him, tail lowered, ears stiff. The dog's attention kept drifting upward, toward the same horizon Logan watched. Rex didn't bark, didn't whine. He just stared, muscles taut, as if he could feel the pressure dropping even more sharply than Logan could. "Yeah," Logan murmured. "I see it too." He pulled the wool scarf Hank had given him tighter around his neck, grateful for its rough warmth. Then he turned toward the cave, that growing sense of urgency settling deep in his bones. The next 48 hours could shape everything. Up here, storms didn't just test you. They swallowed you whole if you weren't ready. Inside the cave, the air felt steadier. Logan looked over the small improvements they'd made. The half-finished wall, the draft-ready hearth, the place where they'd stacked what little wood they'd gathered. It wasn't enough. Not for what was coming. "Rex," he called. "Come on, we've got work." The dog fell in alongside him as Logan began dragging more branches toward the cave. He gathered fallen pine limbs, split deadwood, and stripped dry bark, anything that would burn. Each swing of the hatchet sent tremors through his already sore arms. His breath wheezed faintly, the cold scraping at old wounds inside his chest. But he didn't stop. Not until 2 piles of firewood sat stacked against the inner wall. Rex paced beside him, alert to every snapping twig or rustling wind gust. When Logan paused too long, Rex nudged him gently, urging him on. The mountain didn't care that Logan's body was worn or that his lungs protested with each inhale. The storm was coming all the same. By dusk, the wind had grown teeth. It clawed down the narrow path, swirling leaves and dust into frantic spirals. Logan hurried to reinforce the front wall, pressing new wedges of stone and wood into the gaps. The structure groaned under his hands, complaining like an old man pushed too far. He stepped back, squinting at it. "Hold together," he murmured, "just long enough." Rex sniffed along the base, examining every crack, occasionally pawing at a loose edge until Logan tightened it. They worked like that, man and dog, until the light sank completely behind the ridge. Snow began as a whisper, a soft patter, barely audible. Logan felt it before he saw it. Tiny specks tapping against his skin, cold and delicate. The first flakes drifted past the cave mouth, swirling in the rising wind. He exhaled slowly. Here it starts. They retreated inside, pulling the makeshift door section mostly closed. Logan lit a small fire in the newly shaped hearth, watching the smoke rise, waver, and then finally drift toward the fissure above. A clean draft. The fire burned bright, warm, reliable. For now. Rex settled near the entrance, staring out into the dark like a silent sentinel. Logan sat beside the fire, stretching his stiff hands toward the flames. Outside, the storm gathered strength. Winds howled across the ridge, rattling branches like bones. Snow thickened, whirling in frantic patterns. Soon the mountainside was a blur of white motion, the world erased in every direction. Inside the cave, dim firelight flickered against the walls, casting long, trembling shadows. The warmth pushed back the cold, but barely. Logan could feel the temperature dropping, creeping across the stone floor like a living thing. He looked at Rex. "Next 48 hours decide if we stay alive." The dog didn't break eye contact, didn't blink, just listened, understanding everything without needing words. A gust slammed into the cliffside above them, sending snow cascading across the overhang. The sound rolled into the cave, a low, ominous rumble, like the mountain clearing its throat. Logan stood and checked the wall again. Every board, every log, every stone. His fingers shook, not from cold this time, but from memory. Another storm, another night, another place where walls had failed and lives had changed. He pressed the heel of his hand against his chest, grounding himself. "This time is different," he whispered. Rex padded to his side, leaning gently against his leg. Night deepened. Snow thickened. Wind screamed down from the ridge, battering the cave door. Logan braced his shoulder against it for a moment, feeling the force behind each blast. He secured it with a length of cord, tying it tight to a rock spike he'd wedged into the wall. Minutes stretched into hours. The fire cracked and hissed. Frost crept along the doorframe. A deep groan echoed from somewhere above the cave as snow piled heavy against the overhang. Logan crouched near the fire, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids. But he didn't sleep. He couldn't. Rex sat beside him, eyes fixed on the wavering shadows near the entrance. "Stay awake with me," Logan murmured. Rex rested his chin on Logan's boot, keeping watch even when Logan's head dipped. Sometime near dawn, the storm found a new gear. The wind shifted direction sharply, a sudden, violent gust slamming into the cliffside. And for the first time, Logan felt it through the cave floor. A faint tremor, a vibration that didn't belong to simple weather. He snapped awake fully. Rex lifted his head, ears pulled flat with unease. "What was that?" Logan whispered. Another tremor, louder. Then a sound like heavy snow sliding in mass along stone. Logan's breath caught. He moved to the door, feeling the pressure behind it rising, growing, pushing inward with steady force. Snow piling, snow pressing, snow threatening to seal them in. His pulse hammered. He looked at Rex. Rex stared back, silent but fierce, waiting for his lead. The storm wasn't done with them. Not by a long shot. And the next move it made might decide whether man and dog saw another sunrise. The storm reached a pitch Logan had only ever heard once before, far away, in a place where sandstorms swallowed whole convoys and turned daylight into darkness. But this storm was colder, heavier, alive with the weight of winter pressing down on the mountain. Snow hammered the cliffside in relentless sheets. Wind roared through the trees like a freight train barreling blind through the night. Inside the cave, everything trembled. Logan braced his palm against the inner wall, feeling the vibration thudding through stone and bone. "Easy, easy," he whispered to himself, though the trembling wouldn't stop. Rex paced near the door, tail tucked tight, ears flat, body taut with warning. He wasn't afraid. He was alert, calculating, tracking every shift in the cave's breathing. Then Logan smelled it. Smoke. Not the warm, steady smoke of a healthy fire, but a harsh, clawing bite that curled low to the ground. He turned sharply. The fire still burned in the hearth, but its flame bent unnaturally, pulled downward instead of rising. Smoke no longer drifted toward the fissure above. It pushed back, rolling heavy into the cave, gathering thick around the floor. No, 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 this isn't right. A gust slammed against the entrance. Snow packed tighter around the door, sealing the edges. The pressure in the cave shifted violently. Rex barked, a sharp, panicked warning. Logan's lungs tightened the moment he inhaled. The smoke tasted bitter, catching deep behind his ribs. His vision blurred around the edges. His breath came thin, ragged. "The vent," he coughed out. It's blocked! Rex darted toward him, barking insistently, tugging at his sleeve, urging movement. I'm going, Logan rasped. He staggered to the door and shoved. It didn't budge. Snow pressed back hard, like a wall of wet cement. Logan braced both hands and pushed with everything he had. A narrow crack opened, just enough for icy wind to blast in and slap his face numb. He squeezed through the gap, Rex barking desperately behind him, the dog's voice muffled as Logan forced his way into the white chaos. The storm swallowed him instantly. Snow whipped sideways, stinging like needles. Wind roared in his ears until he couldn't hear his own breath. The sky was gone, replaced by a swirling white void. The cliffside above the cave was a faint, dark shape in the blinding storm. Logan hunched low, gripping the stone wall as he climbed toward the vent fissure. His hands numbed within seconds. His boots slipped on ice-coated ledges. The cold cut through his jacket, slicing straight into muscle and bone. He reached the narrow rock shelf above the cave, only to find it buried under feet of packed snow. The vent was completely sealed. His pulse hammered. Damn it! He dropped to his knees and began digging with bare hands, scooping away frozen clumps, smashing at ice with frantic determination. The storm shrieked around him. Snow poured over the ledge like a waterfall turned solid. His fingers burned. Then they stopped burning, a dangerous sign. Don't shut down now! Come on! He growled at himself. He switched to his hatchet, chipping at the vent opening. Each strike sent shards of ice flying. His breath became ragged gasps. His vision blurred again, not from smoke, but from cold and exhaustion. A chunk of ice broke free. Smoke instantly poured through the new opening, spilling upward into the storm, a dark ribbon against the screaming white sky. Almost there. Logan chipped again, and again. Finally, the entire blockage split apart in a violent crack. The vent opening widened, just enough for the chimney inside to breathe again. For a moment, Logan felt pure, overwhelming relief. He had done it. The cave would clear. Rex would be safe. But the victory came at a cost. His hands had gone nearly white, numb to the bone. His legs trembled beneath him. The wind hit him with another brutal gust, nearly knocking him off the ledge. He grabbed a rock spike with both hands, clinging to it, fighting to stay upright. Move, he told himself. Get back. But his legs felt slow, stiff, uncooperative. He half climbed, half slid down the rock face, boots skidding across icy stone. He hit the ground hard, knocking the breath from his lungs. Snow piled around him instantly, covering his shoulders, creeping into his collar. Get up, he muttered. Get up. The storm didn't wait. The storm didn't care. He forced himself to his feet, body screaming, vision tunneling. He stumbled toward the entrance, pushing through the knee-deep drifts until he reached the narrow crack he'd squeezed through earlier. A shape appeared inside the gap. Rex. The dog whined frantically, paws scraping at the snow, trying to widen the opening. His eyes were huge, pained, terrified for his person. I'm here, Logan whispered. He pushed against the door with all the strength he had left. Rex pushed from the inside, bracing his body, growling with effort. Inch by inch, the door gave. Logan fell forward, collapsing into the cave, dragging a cascade of cold air and snow with him. Rex immediately pressed himself against Logan's chest, whining, licking at his numb hands, trying to warm them. Logan gasped, coughing, shuddering uncontrollably. The fire was burning clean now, the smoke rising properly up the vent. He crawled toward it, letting the heat reach him slowly, carefully, knowing that warming too fast could hurt him worse. His fingers throbbed as they thawed, deep, painful pulses. He clenched his jaw, refusing to cry out. Rex curled himself around Logan's side, sharing every ounce of warmth his thick coat could provide. Minutes passed. Slowly, breath returned to Logan's lungs in steadier waves. Color crept back into his fingertips. The shaking eased. You're a lifesaver," he whispered, stroking Rex's head with trembling hands. "I'd be dead out there without you." Rex pressed closer, as if saying, "I know." The storm continued its rampage outside, filling the night with its monstrous voice. Snow hammered the walls again and again, determined to swallow the mountain whole. But inside the cave, firelight flickered steadily. Smoke drifted upward cleanly. Logan and Rex lay curled together on the stone floor. Alive, exhausted, shaken to their core, but alive. The mountain had thrown its worst at them, and somehow they had endured. But as Logan drifted in and out of exhausted awareness, he knew something else, too. This storm was only the beginning. The night dragged on like a slow, heavy tide, waves of wind crashing endlessly against the mountain. The cave shook at times, stone groaning under the weight of snow stacking above it. But inside, the fire burned steady, its muted glow stretching across the walls like warm hands pressed against the cold. Logan lay curled near the hearth, wrapped in the thin blanket he owned, and whatever body heat Rex could give. Every inch of him throbbed. His fingers burned from thawing. His ribs ached from coughing and the strain of climbing, and a deep fatigue settled in the hollows beneath his eyes. Rex refused to leave his side. The dog positioned himself half across Logan's chest, half along his ribs, warming him with steady breaths. He lifted his head only when the wind howled especially harshly, then lowered it again, as if guarding against the cold trying to seep in. The fire popped softly. Ash drifted upward in delicate spirals. Outside, the storm screamed like some ancient creature raging against the mountain. But inside was quiet. Heavy quiet. Sacred quiet. Hours passed before Logan stirred enough to lift a hand and rest it weakly against Rex's shoulder. "You stayed with me," he whispered, voice cracked with exhaustion. Rex nudged his chin under Logan's palm, pushing gently as if to say, "Of course, always." The warmth between them was more than just heat. It was the kind of silent understanding forged in places where survival wasn't guaranteed. Logan had felt it overseas, between soldiers who knew the weight of relying on each other. But feeling it here, in a frozen cave in Idaho, wrapped in silence and snow and the faint glow of flame, it hit different, deeper. Logan shifted slightly, wincing from the stiffness in his hands. His fingertips pulsed with slow waves of returning sensation. Painful, yes, but it meant life. It meant blood was flowing again. Rex lifted his head, studying him with eyes that seemed older than the 5 years he carried. "Yeah, I'm still here," Logan murmured. "Thanks to you." He wasn't sure how long they stayed like that. The storm outside didn't weaken. If anything, the wind grew more spiteful, slamming against the cave door with force that made the logs shudder. Snow crept in small drifts across the cave mouth, hissing as the fire warmed their edges. At one point, Logan forced himself upright, though his body protested with every movement. His breath came in shallow bursts, each inhalation tugging painfully at the deep scar behind his ribs. Rex whined, circling him, worried. "I know," Logan said softly. "Just need to check something." He approached the door and pressed a palm against it. The wood was ice cold, but it held firm. Behind it, he could hear the muffled weight of snow pressing inward. An entire world trying to bury them, erase them. Logan didn't hesitate long. He knew better than to open the door again tonight. He returned to the fire and lowered himself gingerly onto the ground. Rex lay back down beside him, warm and steady. Logan watched the fire for a while. Its flames wavered gently, rising through the reinforced chimney like a bright thread pulled through thick stone. He traced their movement with tired eyes. "You saved us too," he whispered to the fire, to the cave, to everything that had not failed them tonight. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. The cave's quiet wrapped around him, thicker and more comforting than any blanket. His breathing steadied. The tremors in his hands softened. Rex, sensing the shift, rested his head across Logan's chest again. The dog's weight was reassuring, protective in a way that struck Logan deep. He ran his fingers through Rex's fur, letting the steady warmth ground him. "You did good," he murmured. "You did so damn good." Rex answered only with a soft puff of breath. The storm raged on, but in that cave, inside those stone walls shaped by time and chance, peace found a foothold. A fragile one, but a real one. Logan felt it settle in his bones slowly, like a tired traveler easing into a long-awaited rest. Eventually, the fire dimmed to a soft red glow. The shadows lengthened. The wind quieted just enough for Logan to hear the calming rhythm of Rex's breathing. And Logan, exhausted beyond thought, drifted into a rare, dreamless sleep. It wasn't filled with nightmares. It wasn't haunted by memories. It was simply still. It was healing. And somewhere between the hush of the fire and the warmth of Rex pressed against him, Logan Hale realized something he hadn't let himself believe in a long time. He was going to survive this mountain. Not because he was strong, but because he wasn't alone. Together, man and dog, broken, worn, stubborn, they had endured the storm's worst. And dawn, whenever it came, would find them alive. Morning didn't arrive with sunlight. It came as a pale gray glow pressing against the cracks of the cave door. A hesitant suggestion that the world outside still existed. The storm had finally quieted sometime before dawn, leaving behind a silence so heavy it felt sacred. Logan pushed himself upright, muscles aching, fingers stiff but responsive. Rex rose with him, stretching, shaking frost from his coat, then nudging Logan's arm as if checking whether he was truly awake. "Yeah," Logan whispered, rubbing the dog's neck. "We made it." He moved toward the entrance and pressed a shoulder into the door. It resisted at first, snow piled thick against it, but after a hard shove, the door cracked open, spilling a drift of powder across the cave floor. Logan stepped outside and froze, not from the cold, but from awe. The world had changed. The forest, the ravine, the slope, everything was buried under a blanket of white, so smooth and untouched it looked like another planet. Trees bent under heavy loads of snow, their branches sagging low. The dammed creek had slowed to a thin ribbon beneath a crust of ice. The sky hung crisp and clean, washed of storm clouds, as if the mountain had been scrubbed new. Rex bounded into the snow with a sudden burst of joy, kicking up powder, leaving trails of paw prints like scattered commas. Logan followed him, feeling the crunch of frozen crust beneath his boots. He scanned the ridge above, expecting nothing, but movement broke the pristine landscape. A lone figure trudged down the slope, bundled in a wool coat, breath trailing behind him. The old walking stick gave him away even before his face did. Hank Alder. Logan's chest loosened in relief he didn't realize he'd been holding. Hank waved once as he approached. "Good morning, hale and hearty?" Logan huffed a laugh. "Barely." Hank's gaze swept the cave entrance, the reinforced wall, the chimney vent still smoking lightly. He nodded with genuine respect. "You kept her together. Most folks would have been buried alive in a storm like that." "Came close," Logan admitted. Rex trotted over to Hank, sniffing his coat before deciding he was friend, not threat. Hank rewarded him with a pat on the head. "Smart dog," he murmured. "Knows where the good souls are." Logan raised a brow. "Not sure I qualify." Hank's smile was small but certain. "You survived. You saved your own life and that dog's. You built a shelter out of nothing. That's more than a lot of men can say." Logan shifted awkwardly, unused to praise. "Still plenty to fix." "Always is," Hank replied. "Think that's what keeps us going." He handed Logan a small cloth bundle, jerky, dried apples, and a tin of something that smelled faintly of cinnamon. "Brought you breakfast. Figured you'd need calories after a night like that." Logan blinked, surprised by the generosity. "You didn't have to." "Sure I did," Hank shrugged. "Folks in town are all whispering about you anyway. Claim there's some stubborn ex-soldier living out here like a mountain ghost." Logan winced. "Great." "Oh, it gets better," Hank chuckled. "They've started calling this spot Hale's Hollow." Logan stared at him, speechless. Rex barked once, as if amused. "It's not meant kindly," Hank added. "More like folks shaking their heads, saying you're crazy for living out here." Logan let out a slow breath, then surprised himself with a low laugh. "Let them call it whatever they want. This place kept us alive." Hank's eyes softened. That it did. They walked back toward the entrance together, surveying the damage from the storm. The drift against the door was nearly 3 feet thick. Snow had piled against the chimney vent as well, though the heat from the fire had melted just enough to keep it open. The wall Logan built had held, though a few logs had cracked from the pressure. "It's solid work," Hank said, running his hand along the top log. "You've got a knack for building." "Just doing what I need to." "That's the spirit that gets a man through winter." Rex nosed a patch of disturbed snow near the tree line, barking once. Logan followed his gaze but saw only a faint indentation, tracks partially filled by new snowfall. Hard to tell what made them. Too big for a fox, too heavy for a hare. Something else had moved near their cave during the storm. Hank noticed his stare. "Probably just a deer," he said. But something in his tone betrayed a sliver of doubt. Logan didn't push the subject, but he didn't forget it either. By noon, Hank had helped him reinforce the wall, tightening the door frame, clearing the vent, and checking the roof line where ice had formed dangerously close to the ledge. "You'll want to keep an eye on that," Hank said. "If too much snow settles up there, you'll end up with a cave full of powder and not enough air." "Yeah," Logan grunted, resisting a cough. "Already learned that lesson." Hank gave him a steady look. "You're doing good out here, Logan. You and that dog of yours. You're making a life." Logan stared at the horizon, at the glittering snow stretching endlessly across the valley. "Feels strange," he admitted. "But maybe this is where we're meant to be, for now." Hank nodded. "Sometimes life pushes us off the road so we can find the trail we were supposed to take." As afternoon faded into a pale winter sunset, Hank gathered his things. I'll come by in a few days, he said. But you two look like you're going to be just fine. Rex stood beside Logan as they watched the old man climb back up the ridge, his figure growing smaller against the snowy slope. When he finally vanished, Logan looked down at Rex. "Hales Hollow," he said with a faint smile. "Has a ring to it." Rex wagged his tail once, approving. Logan stepped inside the cave, feeling the draft of warm air brush past him. The fire crackled softly. The dam held. The chimney drew true. Their shelter, hard-won, imperfect, stubborn, had survived the storm. For the first time, Logan let himself breathe fully. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was settling, rooting, becoming part of the mountain itself. And as Rex curled beside him near the fire, Logan felt the weight of the world ease off his shoulders, leaving behind something lighter, something close to pride. They had endured. They had rebuilt. And Hales Hollow, once a name spoken in doubt, was becoming a name of strength. The storm's aftermath lingered for days, quiet, heavy, the world blanketed in thick snow that softened every sound. Logan woke each morning to the same silence, broken only by the crackle of fresh firewood and the soft padding of Rex's paws across stone. The cold still cut deep, but something in the air was different now. They had survived the worst the mountain had thrown at them, and the mountain, in its own harsh way, seemed to acknowledge them. As the days passed, the sun returned in thin slivers, melting the top layer of snow and revealing the rough, determined work Logan had done to keep the cave standing. The wall he'd built leaned slightly now, but it held. The chimney vent worked cleanly, steam rising into cold air like a quiet flag of victory. The dam remained intact beneath a skin of crystal ice, sheltering slow-moving fish in the deeper pool. One morning, as the pale light crept over the ridge, Logan stepped outside with Rex trotting ahead of him. The cold pinched his lungs, but this time he could breathe through it. He paused on the ledge, looking out at Sawtooth Ridge, white peaks stretching endlessly, sharp against the blue sky. A strange feeling settled in him. Not fear, not uncertainty. The longing. Rex barked once and trotted toward the creek. Logan followed, watching as the dog sniffed along the bank, tail swaying with revived curiosity. The mountain didn't feel like an enemy now. It felt like a test they had passed together. When the sun hit the ice just right, Logan crouched by the dam, tapping the surface gently. Beneath the ice, shadows moved, fish circling slowly, waiting. "Looks like we'll eat well today," he murmured. Rex let out a soft woof, approving. Later, back at the cave, Logan cleaned the fish with practiced care, setting them over the fire with a few pieces of pine for flavor. The smell filled the whole space, simple, warm, comforting. Rex lay near the hearth, eyes half closed, savoring the peace. Logan watched him for a long moment. "We've come a long way, huh?" Rex thumped his tail twice, as if agreeing. When the fish finished cooking, Logan shared pieces with Rex, letting the moment linger. Food tasted different when you'd earned it. Fire felt sweeter when it didn't choke you. Safety felt deeper when you'd nearly lost it. After eating, Logan stood and walked toward the cave wall, smooth stone worn by time. He rummaged through his pack and pulled out his old folding knife, the one that had followed him through deserts, jungles, and cities, and now into the frozen heart of Idaho. With slow, careful strokes, he carved into the rock. Built by two soldiers, one human, one loyal. He stepped back and exhaled. It wasn't fancy, wasn't pretty, but it was true. It was theirs. Rex padded over, sniffing the carving, tail wagging faintly. "Yeah," Logan whispered. "It's for us." The fire popped behind them, sending sparks upward into the chimney's narrow throat. Warm light danced across the cave walls, making the stone look alive, breathing with them. Then Rex's head snapped around, ears forward, body rigid. Logan froze. "What is it?" Rex trotted toward the back wall of the cave, the farthest point, where darkness pooled even when the fire burned bright. Logan grabbed the lantern and followed him, holding the flame high. The back of the cave was uneven, shaped by centuries of water flow. Logan had never explored it fully, not in the panic of arrival, nor during the days of repairing the chimney or surviving the storm. Rex pawed gently at the far left corner, where two stones met in a narrow seam. Logan lowered the lantern. A faint draft brushed his fingers. "Another vent?" he whispered. No. Too low. Too steady. The air moved outward, not upward. Logan pressed his palm against the stone. It felt hollow behind it. He knelt, examining the seam more closely. The crack extended downward, then to the right, forming a rough outline hidden by time and shadow. A natural doorway, or the beginning of one. "Easy," Logan murmured, not wanting to startle Rex or himself. He wedged his fingers into the crack and pulled gently. The stone shifted. Not much, just enough to prove it wasn't as solid as it looked. Rex whined softly, leaning close, tail stiff with alert curiosity. "Well, I'll be," Logan whispered, breath fogging the cold air. Behind the stone was darkness, deeper darkness, a hollow space waiting beyond. The cave wasn't just a cave, it was part of something larger, older. Rex stepped forward, sniffing into the opening, ears perked. Not afraid, just aware. Logan ran a hand down the dog's back. "Looks like this mountain isn't done with us yet, buddy." He stood there a long moment, staring into the new darkness, feeling the mountain breathe around him. There was work to be done. There were mysteries ahead. There were days yet to survive, moments yet to endure, and a new path waiting just beyond the broken stone. But for tonight, they had warmth, they had food, they had shelter, and they had each other. Logan lowered the lantern, letting the shadows soften once more. He and Rex settled near the fire, the glow painting their faces in peaceful amber light. Outside, the snow glistened under a clear sky. Inside Hale's Hollow, a man and his dog rested in the home they had built from nothing, with scars, with grit, with loyalty unbroken. And the mountain, wild and ancient, watched over them quietly. The end for now, but not the end of their story. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Before you go, drop a simple comment below, even just 0 or 1, so I know you were here with Logan and Rex until the final moment. Your comments tell YouTube this story mattered. And if you want to follow their journey into the next chapter of Hale's Hollow, make sure you subscribe to the channel. More stories of resilience, loyalty, and second chances are on the way. I'll see you in the next one.